President Cyril Ramaphosa and his predecessor Jacob Zuma went head-to-head at the High Court in Johannesburg. Today, Ramaphosa is fighting to block Zuma from privately prosecuting him. Zuma claims Ramaphosa is an accessory after the fact in alleged criminality by prosecutor Billy Downer and journalist Karen Moore. Judgment in that case has since been reserved. We'll hear on Monday at 9:30 what's the outcome. Our reporter Moloko Moloto has been covering that story. He joins us now. Moloko, thanks indeed for talking to us. So what was the purpose of court proceedings today? What happened in court?
Hello, Devon. Well, what transpired in court today first was the argument by the lawyer representing Cyril Ramaphosa, who wanted to convince the court to stop or to give the president an order that would interdict Mr. Jacob Zuma from proceeding or commencing with a criminal case against the president that's scheduled to take place in the High Court here in Johannesburg next week, Thursday, on the 19th. The president argues that if the former president is permitted to proceed with that particular criminal case, which, as you correctly said, relates to the leaking of Mr. Zuma's medical certificate, allegedly, by journalist Karen Moore and top prosecutor Mr. Billy Downer. He is saying that he, as the President of the Republic, was not party to that particular leaking or alleged leaking of that medical certificate of the President. But secondly, he is saying when Zuma wrote a letter to him in 2021 in August to say that Zuma was essentially complaining to the President, asking him to institute an inquiry into the top prosecutor. And Zuma is saying the President did not do that which he requested to do, and this is why he says he is an accessory after the fact. Now, the President says, if I'm hauled to the criminal court, there's so much irreparable harm that he says he will incur, and he says it's got implications not only for him, but for the country as well, saying that this is a political case by Mr. Zuma, who wants to frustrate his presidency. Let's listen to the lawyer representing the president there.
And remember, the president is not an authority that investigates crime under our constitution. Can you imagine if any minister can receive a request to investigate crime and they're eavesdropping in your telephone calls and investigating crime? They are authorities that the constitution says are law enforcement agencies that investigate crime. And this is a person who was himself a president. He knows it. Even as president, he couldn't investigate crimes. How could he say that he asked the president to investigate crime? And when the president took steps, that in the taking of those steps, just because there hasn't been an outcome, the president is an accessory after the fact or has defeated the ends of justice.
All right, we've got the point.
And the second point related to that,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, carry on.
Is that there is something unsound in the request if it is to investigate a crime. Because this very crime is before the criminal courts. They're prosecuting Mr. Downer and they're prosecuting Ms. Moore. How does the president, in parallel to the courts, investigate the crime? That's just unsound.
And Moloko, what is former President Jacob Zuma, that legal team, saying about his stance this afternoon?
Well, Devon, the former president is being represented by Advocate Dalim Bofu, who obviously did all he could to try to poke holes on the arguments by the current president. He is basically saying that, look, as matters stand, the president is a criminally charged person. So the irreparable harm he's talking about, this particular court cannot assist him in that regard by issuing out or granting the this application of stopping the commencement of that particular criminal matter on the 19th of January, which is next week, Thursday. You would recall that the President Ramaphosa, while he's saying he wants that particular court matter to be stopped, on the one hand, which is part B of his application, he's saying he wants to challenge the constitutional validity and the legality of the non-prosecution certificate, which has been granted by the NPA to Mr. Zuma, which is the one Mr. Zuma is now using to charge privately the President of the Republic. So Mr. Zuma is arguing that the certificate he received from the NPA in November 2021 is actually charging, or it permits him to privately prosecute any person who somehow, one way or the other, is involved in this matter, as much as the president's name doesn't appear on that particular certificate. Now, the former president is arguing that, look, this is not political anyway. According to Advocate Mpofu, the issue of the step aside can still be instituted against the current president anyway, because as matters stand, he is charged. He remains charged criminally. But let's listen to Advocate Mpofu there, representing Mr. Jacob Zuma.
The entire step-aside debate is actually evidence that this court should not grant this relief. Why? Because on their own version, the so-called step-aside rule kicks in, so the harm related to the step-aside rule kicks in once you are charged. Right? So that has happened already on the 15th of December 2022. So let's assume for a minute this court grants this relief that is being asked for here. The step-aside rule will still be operational, because the only two things that can get the president or Mr. Ramaphosa out of that jeopardy, two are: one, that the summons and the charges are set aside in Part B, not here. Two, that the public prosecutor, the private prosecutor withdraws the whole thing. Apart from those two things, if he is, I don't know if he is vulnerable to a step-aside rule, then he will be, even if you grant this relief. Because the charges will still be there until the day they are set aside, expeditious, or rather on an expedited date or whatever. But not this court is incapable of getting him out of that jeopardy.
All right, some detail then what's been happening at the Johannesburg High Court this afternoon. Our reporter Moloko Moloto bringing us that briefing.